The federal occupation of New Orleans occurs fairly early in the Civil War, and it takes place at the end of April 1862. And the man who's really responsible for the military victory was Admiral David Farragut of Tennessee. But the man who's going to take credit for the Union acquisition of New Orleans and will oversee the first 6 months of Union occupation is the infamous Major General Benjamin Butler, known to many in New Orleans then and now as Beast Butler or Spoons Butler. Butler did many controversial things both before he arrived in Louisiana and after, particularly after he takes possession of New Orleans. And one of the most controversial things that Butler does is issue General Order Number 28, which is issued 2 weeks into his occupation of New Orleans, which suggests something about how troublesome the women of New Orleans had become to federal troops.
As the officers and soldiers of the United States have been subject to repeated insults from the women calling themselves ladies of New Orleans, in return for the most scrupulous non-interference and courtesy on our part, it is ordered that hereafter, when any female shall, by word, gesture, or movement, insult or show contempt for any officer or soldier of the United States, she shall be regarded and held liable to be treated as a woman of the town plying her avocation.
Confederate loyal women would cross the street to avoid Union soldiers, would sometimes move their skirts aside. They had very large skirts during that period of time. They encouraged their children to spit on Union soldiers. They would laugh at their funeral corteges below their balconies. So they were finding ways to be obnoxious to the Union troops. And so on May 15, 1862, Butler issues General Order Number 28, which essentially says if the women of New Orleans continue to behave through word, gesture, or movement toward Union troops in a way we find offensive, they will be liable to be treated as women of the town plying their avocation. And that last line, of course, has been interpreted in a number of different ways, but it seemed patently clear to people at the time that what this suggested is that if the women of New Orleans continued to resist the Union occupation through word, gesture, and movement, that they would be liable to be treated as the city's prostitutes might be treated, or as prostitutes might be treated in any occupied city. So it left something to the imagination, but not too much. This is quite a controversial order. After the war, Butler will claim complete and total victory for General Order Number 28. But a closer look at the historical record makes clear that women continued to resist Butler and his soldiers throughout the occupation. One really good example is a woman named Eugenia Levy Phillips. Eugenia Levy Phillips writes her own memoir after the war. She was a very Confederate identified and loyal woman who had come to New Orleans after she had been ejected from Washington, D.C. For being Confederately loyal. During the first week of Butler's occupation, her son actually spits on a Union officer, and she's called in with her husband, Mr. Philip Phillips, and makes a cursory apology to Butler. But her sort of outrageous, in Butler's view, behavior continues. Particularly, she's laughing at a funeral cortege of a Union soldier who goes below her balcony. And she's actually imprisoned at Ship Island for 2 weeks for breaking General Order Number 28. There are other women who are arrested and sent to Ship Island, and by October, the women of New Orleans, just like the men, particularly those who are Confederately identified in a public way, are required to take an oath of loyalty or leave the city of New Orleans. And so Butler is sort of summarily dismissed from New Orleans in late December of 1862. But by that time, he sent several thousand New Orleanians packing out to Confederate lines because they refused to swear an oath of loyalty to the Union. So Butler's tenure in New Orleans is extremely controversial, but he was a controversial figure who had presidential ambitions, would serve in the Senate after the Civil War, and so in some ways he's looking to cause controversy, and that's how he gets the name both Beast and Spoons for confiscating the goods of Confederate loyal people in New Orleans and then ejecting some of them from the city.